I'll start off perhaps with an observation that will lead me to a question. And this observation is that, I think as human beings, and this probably dates back to 50,000 years of evolution, as human beings, we tend to be disproportionately impacted by very scary events. And it goes back to probably when we had to leave our caves and we had to worry about getting eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. But basically, when something really scary happens, it can sort of cloud our judgment. It overtakes our brain, and it becomes all that we focus on. So let me give you a quick example of what I mean. If I asked you, what was the scariest, not the scariest, sorry. What was the most important event of 2001? You would most likely say, you would most likely say it was 9/11. This was a traumatic event for the whole world. With the benefit of hindsight, however, we know that the most important event of 2001 was China joining the WTO. This really completely upended the global economic architecture. Or if I asked you what was the most important event of 2007, 2008, you might say it was the global financial crisis, the subprime implosion, the banks going bust, etc. Again, with the benefit of hindsight, we know that the single most important of late 2007, early 2008 was the launch of the smartphone, of the iPhone. This created a new ecosystem that, has spawned so much creativity, so many new companies, and obviously all the kind of stuff that Rajiv looks at every day and twice on Sunday. With this in mind, when we look back at 2020 and 2020, 2021, what will we look back on? You'd say, well, it's obvious, it's COVID, right? This is the event that will mark a generation. Just like 9/11 marked a generation. Let me suggest this, though. Let me suggest that perhaps, at least for us investors, for us those of us who have to deploy capital, perhaps a more important event, and I'll try to explain why in the rest of this presentation, a more important event over the past year was a little bit like the Hounds of Bakersville, the Sherlock Holmes story, the dogs that didn't bark, was the renminbi. Now, throughout my career, most of my career, the renminbi has always been a managed currency. And by and large, when global uncertainty rose, when you didn't know what was going to happen around the world, the Chinese authorities would freeze the value of the renminbi. You see this very clearly from 2008 to 2010, up here on the left of the chart. You see it again in 2015. You may remember that in 2015, China had a massive boom and bust on its equity markets. The equity markets went straight up and then came straight back down. And during that period, basically the renminbi was kept flat for 6 or 9 months. Fast forward to 2020, and here we are, biggest collapse in global trade on record, biggest collapse in global GDP on record, massive global uncertainty. And against that, you have the biggest year-on-year rise in the renminbi on record. This is a clear change of policy from the Chinese government. At the beginning of COVID, if you had asked me, what's the renminbi going to do for the next 12 months? I would have said it's going to flatline, because that's what China had done in every previous crisis, every previous of uncertainty. Today, they've gone the opposite direction. Instead of the thing flatlining, it went absolutely through the roof.